Looking at the hazardous weather graphics, starting up here in the north, there's wind chill advisories out, not warnings, wind chill advisories here for the entire stretch of the Arctic coast for tonight into tomorrow. And that's for wind chills to 55 degrees below zero. Otherwise here, this is all the yellow shaded areas here, all winter weather advisories for snow, blowing snow, and several inches of snow expected through these areas with visibility is reduced to less than a half mile at times in either snow or blowing snow or a combination of that. And you can see that's from the Ambler area, Kobuk Valley, Noatak Valley in toward Bettles, Koyukuk Valley, all the way down across much of the western interior areas. And also for the Copper River Basin, snow advisory out for that area and the western Kenai Peninsula. And then winter storm and blizzard warnings out for the St. Lawrence Island area and the Bering Strait coast, as well as Norton Sound down across the Yukon, Kuskokwim Delta, and Nunivak Island. Snow, blowing snow there, anywhere from 4 to 8 inches or more, give or take. And with the gusty winds that have been blowing 40 to 60 miles an hour, that'll create visibilities less than a quarter mile or whiteout conditions at times. You can see the winter weather advisory extending all the way down here to Bristol Bay. Could see maybe some freezing rain in this area tonight for a short time. Also a winter storm warning out for Kodiak for tomorrow for snow and blowing snow as another system comes up and hits the area there. Same thing here for the southern or the eastern Kenai Peninsula, western Prince William Sound. Winter storm blizzard warning out in that area. Actually currently out, and will stay out through tomorrow. And then also heavy snow warnings out for the Yakutat area and all of the red shaded areas of the southeast coast here, mostly which is most of the area there, except for the southern panhandle. You've got snow advisories out for snow there, lighter amounts of snow than what you'll see in the warning areas there. And, of course, heavy snow up here, not so heavy snow along the central and south coastal areas, Prince of Wales Island. And from there, moving on to satellite imagery, here's the low pressure area that tracked northeastward here into the northern Bering Sea today. And front pushing in, a lot of moisture streaming northeastward here in southwest flows aloft. And that bringing all the snow into south central Alaska today, into the Copper River Basin area and Prince William Sound, and starting to spread into the Panhandle. Kind of let up a little bit there around Kodiak this afternoon, kind of a break coming over there behind the front, but down to the south, there's another system developing that'll be tracking northeastward and become a very intense low up here into the Gulf of Alaska during the day tomorrow. It's just off the map here on that imagery. Otherwise, back to the west, not much going on, kind of a surge of cold air aloft by the open cell queue here over the southwest Bering Sea, as this low pulls that cold air down out of the Russian Far East. Otherwise, clouds now trying to spread north of the Brooks Range, but not making it too far there. Out to the Arctic coast, not too bad today. Kind of a break here over the southwest interior a little bit there, but still some gusty winds going on. Had winds gusting anywhere from 30 to 60 miles an hour in areas here. Earlier today and into the afternoon hours. On the chart, there's that 960 millibar surface low that tracked up to just right off the coast there, about Cape Romanzoff. Snow and blowing snow occurring all around that center here, especially pushing into the central interior and back to the northwest there to the northwest coast. Snow spreading over south central Alaska early this morning and continuing over the Copper River Basin up into the Tanana Valley over toward the eastern border today, and also spreading into the Yakutat area late this afternoon. Basically a dry day over the Panhandle. definitely an increase in the clouds there. And then a couple more low centers here. This one actually developing will link up with the other one tonight. And that's going to bring the snow and blowing snow winter storm warning out for the Kodiak Island area tonight as that tracks northeastward there and brings the moisture back in with those gusty northwest winds. Look for pretty strong northwest winds over the Alaska Peninsula. Lighter winds under the weak ridge there over Bristol Bay. The other low kind of moving slowly northeastward here and toward Bristol Bay. Snow and blowing snow continues there from the Noatak Valley out to the northwest coast, definitely through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, and southward there. Winds lightening up here over the western interior, but still periods of pretty good snowfall occurring there. Snow and blowing snow, Portage Valley, for example, and areas of the Copper River Basin, actually into the northern panhandle, be areas of blowing snow with the winter storm and heavy snow warnings out for most of the southeast coast. As you can see, the warm front spreading good snow and across the entire area there tonight, but the snow not really getting too far north of the Brooks Range there, so still look for dry conditions. A little breezy on the Arctic coast, especially on the west side there with tighter gradient in closer to this low center. Back to the west, widespread area of snow and snow showers. Really not much of a break. Maybe out here becoming a little more widely scattered out there to the west, but still very cold air. Snowfall levels right down to sea level to the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, and actually to the south. And then we'll see for the forecast for tomorrow, this low tracks northeastward here. See very tight pressure field around that, so storm force winds, gales, pretty widespread across all the Gulf of Alaska and in the marine zones here along the North Gulf Coast areas. Storm warnings, Kamishak Bay, Barren Islands, for example, and probably in advance of this front for the North Gulf Coast and northern panhandle. Snow and blowing snow with snow over the southeast coast, maybe changing over to rain as that front pushes in across Prince of Wales Island in the afternoon, but snow and blowing snow continuing for Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, and more of a snow shower condition, south central Alaska now, and areas for Cook Inlet into the Madanuska-Susitna Valley, or the heavier amounts over the Copper River Basin, or back here to the west over the Kuskokwim Valley, back out toward the southwest coast. Still looking colder temperatures with the winds becoming a little more northwesterly there. And then snow hanging up along the Brooks Range, so the North Slope and Arctic coast staying dry. And then out to the west, the next Pacific storm pulling into the western Aleutian, or western Bering Sea, southwest Bering, west-southwest Bering Sea. A couple of frontal boundaries here. Warm front spreading rain and snow condition into the western Aleutians, probably rain west to about AKwx tomorrow afternoon. And then the cold front changing it back to snow as that passes on. We'll see that actually that system kind of damps out and into this trough here as it tracks east-southeastward. Then the next warm front showing up there to the west, spreading snow into Shimianatu late in the day. Weak low up here over the northwest Bering Sea, so wind's not too bad out here. Areas of snow showers not quite as widespread. And actually look for some clearing here over the southwest interior areas from the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, lower Yukon Valley, into Bristol Bay. Dry conditions, much lighter winds, and colder temperatures there. Snow ending, and northwest winds kicking in, but not too strong here, and also kind of a drier condition over south central Alaska. Periods of snow, though, north of the Alaska Range, central eastern interior, now all the way up to the eastern Arctic coast and eastern central North Slope areas, and with low pressure now weakening, but hanging off the southeast coast, off the north coast area, just south of Cape Yakataga. Southwest flow continues snow, periods of snow and snow showers across the southeast coast, but winds much lighter and snowfall amounts not as heavy. And for the low temperatures for tonight down that way, upper teens to upper 20s. Otherwise in the 20s for the North Gulf Coast here near freezing for Kodiak Island. Staying above zero in the Copper River Basin around 10 and 5 to 15 in the Kuskokwim Valley. Lower 20s tonight for Bristol Bay. Otherwise south central Alaska in the teens. And for highs tomorrow, 25 to 30 here, south central Alaska, 15 to 25, Kuskokwim Valley, upper 20s, Bristol Bay, mid-30s, Kodiak Island, near 20 for the Copper River Basin, 30s to near 40 for the southeast coast, followed by lows Thursday morning, 20s to mid-30s for the panhandle there, and 5 below to 5 above Copper River Basin, 10 below for the Kuskokwim Valley, single numbers, Bristol Bay, about 20 there for Kodiak. and then teens, lower to mid-teens here for south central Alaska, followed by highs in the lower to mid-20s for Susitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula, near 20 for the Copper River Basin. Single numbers here west of the Alaska and Aleutian ranges, and in the 30s to near 40 again for the southeast coast. Up to the north, lows tonight right around 0 for Fairbanks, a little below out to the west, definitely below up to the north to the Arctic coast. Then highs tomorrow 5 to 15 through the central interior, staying below 0 Arctic Village and Anatuvik Pass on out to the Arctic coast. And then for the lows the next morning, back below 0 all areas here, even St. Lawrence Island, and anywhere from 15 to 30 below from the North Slope, followed by highs 0 to 5, maybe 10 for Fairbanks, otherwise below 0, and out to the southwest coast. Lows tonight, lower teens here along the coast, lower 20s for the Pribilofs, upper 20s, lower 30s for the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians, followed by highs 30s to near 40 in some areas, colder along the southwest coast, lows around 20 for the Pribilofs, 30s elsewhere, followed by highs 5 along the coast, 30 for the Pribilofs, and near 40 for Alaska.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hi everyone, meteorologist Joel Curtis with your aviation weather. Starting out with our flying weather Wednesday morning, we've got extensive IFR all along the central west coast on up to the Brooks Range, some marginal VFR a little bit further to the north and southwest. Also extensive IFR for Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound, all along the Gulf Coast, including parts of Kodiak Island and the Panhandle. And then for flying weather Wednesday afternoon, we've got some areas of IFR, including the Brooks Range, Norton Sound, Kotzebue Sound, southwestern Alaska, including a portion of the peninsula up to Bristol Bay, also the western slopes of the Alaska Range, central interior, including Copper River Basin, and then all along the Gulf, including almost all of the Panhandle. And then for Thursday morning, a new area of IFR moving in to the Bering Sea that's associated with it. It's approaching the Pribilofs, and then also it's got the Dutch Harbor area. Also IFR over the Brooks Range, far eastern Kotzebue Sound, also the central interior down to the upper Tanana Basin, and then also most of the Panhandle has IFR conditions and some marginal VFR on the Gulf Coast. And then for Thursday afternoon, IFR again starting from the Brooks Range down and into the central interior, some in the upper Tanana Basin, and then IFR conditions for much of the Panhandle. And then also we have a new area of marginal VFR moving into the Pribilofs, central Bering Sea, and then IFR out for the far western Aleutians. So let's take a look at our passes on Wednesday. Start with Anatuvik, IFR, add again marginal VFR, Lake Clark and Merrill, both marginal VFR, Rainy Pass, marginal VFR, Windy Pass, IFR, Isabel Pass, IFR, then we have Mentassa, IFR, Tahita, IFR becoming marginal VFR, Portage Pass, IFR becoming marginal VFR, Chilkoot and White Pass expected to be IFR all day. Take a look at our freezing levels. First of all, we've got the surface freezing line through the Prince of Wales Island, all along the Gulf Coast, down through Kodiak Island and through the Alaska Peninsula, south of the Pribilofs, however. And then we have the warm air aloft ramping up from 2,000 feet in the northern Gulf to 8,000 feet in the southern Gulf. And then for our icing on Wednesday, a significant area of isolated moderate and considerable moderate all the way from the central interior down to Prince William Sound and then all along the Gulf Coast. That considerable moderate for most of the Panhandle, all of that area is 5,000 to flight level 180. And then we also have another area of icing out in the Aleutians, 4,000 to 12,000 feet for the western Aleutians. So now let's take a look at the jet stream. This is pretty pretty interesting. We've got a long band of westerly jet moving across the southern Gulf, and then it becomes southwesterly up to 120 knots over the southeastern interior, all circulating around those major circulation centers that have developed. For a 9,000-foot winds, a very complex and interesting mix of 60 to 75 knots, all from southwestern Alaska down through the Gulf, generally westerlies around those two circulation systems, the southern side. And then when you get to southeast, southwesterlies, and from 70, anywhere from 70 to 80 knots, it's ramping up. So a lot of circulation around those low centers. And then we also have that new center that's entering the Bering Sea, and that one is, about 60 to 75 knots on the south side. So then looking at our 3,000-foot winds, again, 60 to 75 knots around that one out in the Bering Sea, and then with these circulation centers, 70-knot westerlies in the Gulf, ramping down to about 60 in southwestern Alaska or so, not a whole lot of wind up country. And so that leads to our turbulence. Surface is 6,000 feet, considerable moderate all along the Gulf Coast, and then on up into southwestern Alaska, and a few spots like St. Lawrence Island and Point Hope. So fly safe out there.
So the sun, looking here from the ground, seems very constant and quiet, but actually when we look at it from space, we can see it's quite turbulent and active. Space weather is activity on the sun and in the near-Earth space that can affect our technological infrastructure and society. The sun is constantly spewing out a stream of particles called the solar wind that goes out into the solar system. And it affects us here near Earth, where we're protected by a magnetic field. The interaction between the solar wind and the magnetic field can cause space weather. The Carrington event is the largest storm we've seen in recorded history when we're looking at space weather. But every solar cycle, which repeats about every 11 years, one estimate estimates that there's a 10% chance of getting a large storm like the Carrington event that could impact us here on Earth. But we see solar storms almost all the time. And these storms have an effect on our technological infrastructure. Solar storms can cause activity in Earth's atmosphere and magnetosphere that can damage electrical power grids that power our communities, interrupt radio and satellite communications, and can cause our GPS navigation to fail. NOAA is working with its international partners to ensure that we have different vantage points where we can observe space weather. Our space weather observing infrastructure from space includes the NOAA Discover satellite and the NASA ACE satellite that are stationed upstream of Earth to give us a first buoy measurement of the solar wind. It also includes the ESA-NASA SOHO satellite and the NASA Stereo satellite that image the sun and also make coronagraph measurements of the outer atmosphere of the sun, the corona, that can tell us when large explosions happen off the sun. We also observe the sun and the Earth's magnetic field from the geostationary location with NOAA's GOES. So the way we use the space weather information from satellites and from the ground is to be able to make forecasts and predictions, just like we do with hurricanes and terrestrial weather. We observe the sun and look for activity and see how it develops and see if it's going to culminate into a large explosion that can affect us here on Earth. NOAA is working with its international partners to expand our observing capability. Work committed to observing along the Sun-Earth line. So we're going to do the imaging of the sun and the upstream buoy measurements of the solar wind along the Sun-Earth axis. The more we understand about the sun, the more we can prepare for it and become, just like we are a weather-ready nation, become a space weather-ready nation. And as we look forward to humans exploring out into the solar system and advancing our space commerce activities, space weather becomes more and more important.
Here at the Space Weather Prediction Center, we monitor space activity as it's occurring back at the sun, and then we issue out a forecast as well as alerts, watches, and warnings as activity is occurring. A typical space weather event would start with a solar flare back at the sun. That solar flare is short-lived and produces fairly short-lived impacts as well, basically impacting communications on the daylit side of the Earth. However, some solar flares are also associated with a coronal mass ejection or an eruption of plasma that's blasted off the sun and out into space. As forecasters, it's our job to determine if that cloud of plasma is moving towards Earth, and if it comes towards Earth, what the potential impacts may be. Those impacts can range from a fairly low-level storm that may produce the aurora a little bit farther south than usual, or can range up into fairly significant magnetic disturbances that don't happen very often, but when they do, they can impact technologies and infrastructure here on Earth. We provide information to lots of different user groups, from airlines to the electric power grid to emergency managers, aviation, satellite community, lots of different customers.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hi, this is meteorologist Joel Curtis with your marine weather. Starting out with today's sea ice edge, we've got a little back and forth, some retreat on the ice, only a few miles with southerly winds. Then it's going to come right back around to northerly winds with some advance and some cooler temperatures. Same thing for Cook Inlet, significant ice there, retreat back and forth over the next couple of days. For looking at our southeast Alaska waters, first on the outside, we have storm force 50 knots off of Yakutat and Cape Suckling, seas up to 24 feet there. Otherwise, onshore, gale force 35 to 45 knots, seas up to 22 feet. And on the inside waters, we've got winds 30 to 35 knots with gusts of 45 knots in the midsections, and seas 19 feet for Clarence Strait. Then for Thursday's marine forecast, we have 15 to 20 knots on the inside waters, seas up to 4 feet, and on the outside waters, all westerlies onshore, 25 to 30 knots, and seas up to 25 feet. And then for South Central, we've got a lot of circulation around that low. And so sustained winds 50 knots on the outside waters, gusts of 65 in a couple of spots. And then we have northeasterlies 40, seas 10 feet for Prince William Sound, 30 to gale force 35 knots over Cook Inlet, and gusts to 60 near Augustine Island out of the west, and gusts to 65 out of Kennedy Entrance, seas up to 20 feet. And then for Thursday, it lays down a little bit, but the wind 50 knots is persisting out of Kennedy Entrance, seas up to 23 feet there, 30 to 40 knots on the outside, 25 knot northerlies in Prince William Sound, 15 to 30 knots over the ice, and 45 knots near Augustine. And then for the peninsula and Kodiak, we've got westerlies, wind ranging 45 to 55 knots, gusts of 70 off of Kodiak, and then gusts of 50 in Chillicothe Strait, seas maximum minimum seas on the Gulf side, 24 feet, maximum seas on the Bering side, also 24 feet. And then for Thursday, we've got winds lay down a little bit, generally westerlies with a northerly component, wind 30 up to 45 knots on the Gulf side, seas up to 23 feet, and on the Bering Sea side, maximum seas 14 feet with 30 knots. And then for the Aleutian chain, central and eastern Aleutians, we've got 40 to 50 knots, seas up to 23 feet, and then for the western, we've got 45 to 50 knots, seas up to 19 feet, and then we still have 50 knot storm force north of Nikolsky, seas up to 29 feet on the Bering Sea side, but on the Pacific side, 40 to 45 knots, seas up to 23 feet. And then for the west coast, over the ice, we've got wind ranging from 20 to 40 knots in response to that low that's weakening near Norton Sound. And then over the ice-free waters, we have 40 to 45 knots, seas up to 20 feet near the Pribilofs and 19 feet south of Nunivak Island. And then on Thursday, we've got generally northwesterlies, wind ranging all the way from 15 to up to 30 knots, seas 15 feet near the Pribilofs. And then for the Arctic coast, we've got easterlies kicking in 25 to 30 knots, and as you get down to the Chukchi and Bering Strait, we've got 25 to 35 knots over the ice. And then for Thursday, we've got northeasterlies 15 knots along the north slope. As soon as you get to the Chukchi Sea, 20 to 25 knots over the ice. So looking at tonight's weather, we've got 970 millibar low, Norton Sound, and that's fading fast as it moves inland. 966 developer just off of Kodiak Island. Warm air is all confined out into the Gulf, so we have lots of snow and blowing snow. And then for Wednesday, that low develops to 961 millibars with a front moving onshore to southeast Alaska. Snow and blowing snow out ahead of that. Snow and blowing snow and snow showers over the mainland portion. And then we have another developer down by the western Aleutians. And then on Thursday, things really start to lay down quite a bit. That low decreases to 980 in the Gulf. So stay safe out there.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.